My name is Dr. Sherry Walling, and I am a clinical psychologist that focuses on entrepreneur mental health. So I spend a lot of time thinking about chronic stress, burnout, family dynamics, depression, like all of the hard things that go into building a business that aren't about spreadsheets and marketing plans, but are about the inner workings of your heart and your mind. And this is such an important topic. I'm so glad that I have the ability to share it with you today. I found myself having my own encounter with burnout. What happened was I was building my business. I just released a book. I was flying all over the country. I was really growing this consulting practice and really wanting to get the word out about mental health and entrepreneurship. And I also had a dad who was fighting cancer. I had a brother that was sick. I had 3 young children. So my life was crazy town. And it all kind of came to a head when my body started to break down. And I needed a root canal for a tooth that had no cavity. It was perfectly intact. My immune system wasn't functioning very well. And I got this very, normal kind of benign little infection in my mouth that turned into a big problem, and thus the need for a root canal. But the thing is that what happened to my dental health really had much more to do with my mental health. When we are super overwhelmed with stress and with all of the things on our to-do list, our bodies start to break down, and sometimes that's where we will hear the story of burnout. It's not necessarily in the therapist chair, sometimes it's in the dentist chair. And so I tell this story because I want you to hear, beyond any kind of shadow of a doubt, that burnout is possible for all of us, even for someone like me who is an expert in helping people work through burnout. We're all vulnerable, and probably at some point in your experience building and running and growing your business, you will have a season of burnout. So I want to spend some time talking about what that is and why it happens. But first of all, let's pause and acknowledge that everything that makes you good at building a business has to do with your brain. So your creativity, your problem solving, your ability to think outside of the box, to communicate, to develop a marketing strategy, to connect well with people, with your customers, all of that is about your head. It's about your cognitive, your neurological, your intellectual capacity. And so I want you to think about yourself as the greatest asset that your business has. And so when we are talking about burnout, when we're talking about mental health, we are talking about not only taking good care of you as a human, but we're also talking about making a great investment in your business. Because I want you to hear that it is often the mental struggle that will disrupt your ability to run the kind of business that you want. And of course, this isn't unique to entrepreneurs. We are in the middle of really a mental health crisis if we think about what the statistics around mental health are looking like in the United States. So the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, really exacerbated the amount of loneliness and isolation, depression, anxiety, fatigue that all of us were feeling. But even before the pandemic, we've seen a 35% increase in suicide since 1999. We've seen astronomical increases in depression, stress, burnout-related problems. So it's really kind of the crisis of the modern professional. And those of us who are entrepreneurs are absolutely not immune from that. In fact, some of the stresses and pressures that we take on when we say, we are going to make a business, we are going to run our lives, we are going to step into something that's not been done before, we're going to make something where something doesn't exist. We really push ourselves to the edge of what's possible for us. And so we're stressing the system kind of day one. So I think it's extraordinarily important to recognize that we are individuals who are living in a context where we're not always well as a society. We can add to that, of course, systematic racism, sexism, other kinds of mistreatment that just tax us to the point that we no longer feel like we have that creative, beautiful spark that we can give to the world through our business. So this is hard. It's hard to run a business. It's hard to grow something. It's hard to be a human. And then you add all of those together and you are creating a situation in which you have some extra mental health vulnerability that I think is really important to just sit with, acknowledge, know that you're taxing your system or you're making yourself vulnerable in that way. And then let's tell the truth about it so we can get really practical about what we need to do. So, burnout is the word that we most often hear associated with work-related mental health distress. And I've, seen lots and lots of headlines about burnout. If you Google burnout, there's lots of articles from Huffington Post or Forbes or Fast Company. This is a buzzword in the business community. And I also want to tell you, as a psychologist, it's much more than a buzzword. Burnout is a formal diagnosis in the ICD-10. It has a list of symptoms, it has a code. It's a real thing, right? It's not just something that you might see as a title or as clickbait on the internet. The formal title is called Burnout, a state of vital exhaustion. And it is the mental health diagnosis that goes along with deep fatigue related to work. So we have 3 different symptom clusters that constitute burnout. The first one is a sense of physical and emotional exhaustion. This is probably the one that you're most familiar with. That tiredness, that sense of I've lost my oomph, I've lost my spark, I don't have the energy that I used to have for my work or my business anymore. This is the tiredness that we associate with burnout. The second cluster is a sense of cynicism and detachment. So this is where it's almost like our hearts are getting hard, right? We used to be passionate and excited about the work that we're doing, about the business that we're putting out in the world. And that starts to not only feel tiring, but we just don't care in the same way. And we might find ourselves sort of mocking our customers or being really snide toward our team members. We're not the best version of ourselves. We're cynical, we're dark, and frankly, we don't care that much about other people within our business in the way that maybe we used to. There's a separation, there's an isolation, there's a sense of pulling back from the parts of the business that felt so meaningful and engaging before. And then the last component of burnout is a sense of a lack of self-efficacy. It's almost like we've put a filter over our eyes and everything that we see is through the lens of failure or self-criticism. So even if we're winning awards, even if our business is growing, even if revenue is doubling, our minds are telling us a story of failure, of it's not enough, it's not good enough. And so we start to feel tired, and then we start not to care, and then we start to feel nothing's working anyway. I'm not successful, I'm not accomplishing what I want, and there's so much more to do. And burnout is a really terrible way to feel. Can you kind of carry that? Can you hold how it feels? And it is this extinguishing of the spark of the thing that you love. Burnout is probably the driver for much of what we see when we see that the number one cause of disability in the world is mental health related. We don't have to come to a point of feeling this miserable. It's possible for us to run businesses in a sustainable way. So don't feel discouraged by the picture that I painted. I'll get to it, I promise.